Today, I do not really have anything new to teach you. We have learned 4 methods for solving quadratics. We've learned how to solve by factoring, how to solve by taking square roots, how to solve by completing the square, which most people do not enjoy, and then how to solve by doing the quadratic formula. So what we're going to talk about today is if the directions don't specify a certain method, how can you solve the problem the most efficient way? Okay. So that's something we're really concerned about in math. It's not just getting like the right answer, but doing it efficiently. I mean, we don't want to make things harder than they have to be. So different problems will lend themselves to one of these methods over another method. So in your notes, there's this flow chart that helps you kind of discern what might be the best way to solve the quadratic. The first thing I would check is it factorable? So if it just has the x squared term, the x squared, a constant term, is that something you can factor? And if so, you should probably solve it by factoring. Okay. The next thing I would look for is it just an x squared? So is it missing the x term? Or does it have a whole group of something squared? If so, that should definitely be solved by taking square roots. Okay? Some students really don't like factoring, so they might disagree with me that factoring is a good thing to look for and just want to go to like the quadratic formula on that, which is okay. I think factoring is a quicker way about a problem than the whole quadratic formula. But that is up for debate, I suppose. But if it is missing the x term, so it's just x squared and a number, square roots all the way, definitely the fastest way about that. If it has parentheses squared, definitely square roots, because for any other method, you would have to multiply that out. And so you'd have to write, whatever's inside the parentheses, times itself, FOIL the whole thing out, combine like terms to get it in a way where you could possibly do anything else with it. So if it has parentheses and a squared, definitely solve it by taking square roots. That is really by far the best way there. No debate about that. Factorable, students could debate with me on. If it's just x squared and a plain number, it's missing the x term. Again, I think square roots is your best option. Yeah, take the square root of both sides of the equation. If it is not factorable and it's not just x squared or group squared, then quadratic formula. Unless you really love completing the square, and then you could, but completing the square can get very messy, and so most students don't prefer that method. So if you do happen to love it, you can feel free to use that when you want, but most students do not like that method, and so then your kind of last option on that would be using the quadratic formula. On the quiz, it is important that you know how to do each way. There will be problems that say solve by factoring, solve by square roots, solve by completing the square, solve by quadratic formula. And on those problems, you must show work, because that's how I'm going to know that you did it the way I told you to do it. Okay, so even if your answer is right, I'm not going to give you credit on that, because I don't know whether you did it the way I said to do it or you did it some other way. There will also be a group of problems that say just solve. And then you can choose whatever way you want. And that's what we're getting at here, is what's the most efficient way to solve a problem. Okay? For your homework tonight, on the back of that flow chart is a worksheet with 10 questions. For each problem, say which method you're using. Okay, so are you factoring? Are you taking square roots? Are you completing the square? If you want to, I don't suggest it, but if you want to, you can. Or are you using the quadratic formula? So say which way you are doing it, and then actually do it. Okay? And remember that the discriminant does not solve a formula. So that is not an option for this, because in all of these you want to actually solve it. Okay? So you can factor, you can take square roots. If you like completing the square, you can do that. Or you can do the quadratic formula. So say which way you're doing it, and then do it for the 10 questions on the worksheet.